And you are live.
All right, thank you. Okay, it is now 6:05 on Wednesday, June 2nd. I'd like to call the special joint meeting of the Land Use and Building Management Committee of the Common Council and the Facilities Committee of the Norwalk Board of Education. Call it to order. I'll start off by introducing the members of the Common Council who are with us today. I'm here, Tom Livingston, the chair of the Land Use meeting. With us today are Councilman Tom Keegan, Councilman David Hillman, Councilwoman Barbara Smith, Councilman Kadeem Roberts, and Councilman Nick Sechinelli. And Diana, Ms. Carpio, do you want to introduce the members from the Board of Education? I think you're muted. Still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Diana Carpio from the Board of Education. And Suzanne Kershowitz is with us this evening. I believe Mike Barbas was somewhere. I'm not sure if he's still in holding, but he had texted me that he was on, trying to get on.
Okay, and we also welcome Dr. Estrella, Superintendent, and Mayor Rilling is going to try and join us later when he can. Is anybody else waiting? Can you tell?
Cheryl Harris might be waiting too. She was dialing in.
Okay. Any way of knowing? Should we? Oh, Cheryl got on. Okay, good. And that looks like Mike Barbas as well. Okay, good. So first off, I want to thank Ms. Carpio and the members of the Board of Education for joining us tonight. This is something we've talked about together for a while as an opportunity for the two committees that are most responsible for the buildings of school buildings in the city to get together, hopefully on a regular basis, to talk about common issues and common concerns and help us work together on all these items. And as our first meeting, Ms. Carpio and I decided that it would make sense to start with a review of the Connecticut school building process, how it works with the state. We all know the state's involved, but not everybody knows how. And in fact, I've been on the council for now almost coming on 6 years, and I'm always learning stuff. It's a complicated process. Unfortunately, we have Alan Lowe and Jim Giuliani to help us understand that. So tonight, Alan and Jim are going to make a presentation. We want this to be an interactive presentation, to ask questions as we go. The point here is to learn as much as we can, to ask questions where necessary, and just feel free for a free exchange of ideas. And Diana, do you want to add anything before we start with Jim? You're muted again.
Just that, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Just thank you that we're all together and having these conversations so that we can, we've had conversations, Tom and I, about how important communication is between the city and the Board of Education, especially when it comes to facilities and other topics. And this is actually one of the first meetings that we'll have together to be able to have conversations, ask questions of each other, and to be more transparent with each other and collaborate a little better. So thank you, everybody, and I'm looking forward to this meeting.
Great, thank you. So let's turn it over to Alan. Why don't you start and then turn it to Jim as you deem appropriate. And again, everybody feel free to ask questions, interrupt.
Yeah, people interrupt me all the time, so it's quite all right.
He's used to it.
I hope everybody can hear me. Good evening. Jim is going to load up the presentation. The presentation basically has two parts. One is I'm going to start talking about the relationship between Board of Education and the City of Norwalk in terms of the relationship of school construction. And Jim's going to go into details about how the state process works. And together, the combined is how we put the projects together. So Jim put these slides together. I have the first 3 slides really is the relationship between Board of Ed and the city. So I would like to take the opportunity to go through that first, Jim, if you could. So the way the structure of Board of Education in the city is the relationship developed. The first thing any project becomes a real project is Board of Ed does this assessment of needs, which means that similar to what you're doing recently is the facility study and enrollment projection, items that identify why we need a school, condition of school, whether we need a new school or renovated school, and enrollment projection and population, how we distribute the student around the district, and what buildings and what program we want to develop. So that process generally speaking, well, I think Board of Ed took about 3 months, 4 months to actually look at this facility study. Last time we did that was about 5 years ago, and recently Board of Ed did it in the last few months. Developing program requirements and education specifications. So similarly, when you look at the assessment needs and you look at places like, you want to do a magnet school, or you want to do a K-8, or you want to do whatever program, specialized program you want to the system, you have to develop, the Board of Ed needs to develop those strategies first, and then subsequently we develop education specification that stipulate the details, the size of the school, populations, and the grade levels, and on about specific, and how many classrooms, what the classroom consists of, whether it's science rooms and gyms and everything else. So the education specification need to be prepared. And concurrently, I'm privileged to be part of the Board of Ed internal system that I participate a lot with the Board of Ed staff to provide technical assistance. What that means is that when the concept comes up, me and Jim and I start looking at a specific building or property and start helping the Board of Ed to develop a conceptual design, where to place the building or what size the building should be. We look at the state requirements, and also to do a conceptual cost estimating. So with a conceptual design and cost estimate, then we're able to, Board of Ed will be able to develop a budget for the project. So probably in December of every year, the Board of Ed start looking at capital budget requests to the city of Norwalk. And with these numbers, we're in better position to understand what we need and how much we need. These requests will go through the process from December to April 15, generally speaking, through the city's capital budget process, and ultimately the project get funded or not funded. So the Board of Ed is fully responsible and in control of develop the initial phase of the project. After the city funded the project, the city takes it over in a sense, but we don't just take it over just to move on ourselves. We actually work with Board of Ed staff, and as well as Board of Ed facility department, to develop the project, as well as the school community. Jim, could you go to the next page?
Sure. One thing I just wanted to say, Alan, too, just for everybody's information, is that this is basically the same process that any other city, town in Connecticut goes through, in that the Board of Ed typically will determine the need, what that need is, and how that need fits in its overall programmatic process. And, does it, are they going to change a pedagogy in a school? And as a result, do they need to do renovations to a building in order to support that specific program?
So back in around 2003, the city of Norwalk's Common Council adopted Chapter 30 of the City Code. What it did was it identified Land Use and Building Management Committee, or Common Council, as the Norwalk School Building Committee. The term School Building Committee is recognized by the state as the body that represents the city of Norwalk to the state in terms of requests and approvals. So Land Use Committee has been designated based on the city ordinance / city code. Currently, the project cost limit that the city get involved in is roughly $450,000. That's a little more than a rule of thumb, but at the same time, we're really looking at a project that's multi-disciplines, project that have multiple trades involved, including site work, building construction, electrical, plumbing, and on, roofing, everything else. So it's a very diverse kind of construction program. That's what the city would get involved in. If the Board of Ed is going to do it as a straight boiler project, even though it's like maybe $500,000, a lot of times the Board of Ed will handle that themselves because it's much cleaner for the Board of Ed to manage a single trade project than a multidiscipline complex project which involves multiple process kind of thing. So typically, again, it's a project over $450,000.
Alan, if I might, I want to just add in that the land use committee also reviews all capital items relating to the schools that may be under 450, right? So for example, if the Board of Education, like for tonight, for example, tonight we're looking at asbestos removal at Silver Mine, which is less than $450,000, which Bill Hodel is going to be doing, but it comes through land use as a capital item for approval before it goes to the council. So the $450,000 relates to the major construction projects, but we also look at all the other capital items as well relating to the schools.
Yeah, so for when a project that's, for any amount of capital budget money, Bill and I, we follow the city procedure and go for city purchasing department. So those projects typically will not go to the Board of Ed purchasing department because the city capital funding, there will be a contract executed by the mayors. That's why I go for the Common Council. The council approves it. And then the mayor is authorized to execute contracts, and we issue purchase order under those. And all of this is because it's capital budget funding. A couple other things that, since we mentioned it, a couple other things that also fall in the capital budget is actually IT purchases as well as book purchases. They are under the capital budget, therefore it comes through the Land Use and Building Management Committee. And for all these years, I always mention to all new members of Land Use and Building Management Committee members, when Board of Ed submit book purchases and IT purchases, the city's position is not to evaluate whether what books to buy or what computer to buy. It really is about that the money is spent for that purpose as is allocated for, that we are spending that budgeted amount for books and for computer, not so much which books to buy. So that's been very clear to a council member that the council not here for educational evaluation and review. It's really just that the money is spent as the money is designated to be spent. Back to major construction projects, the city also the city code also required that when we implement a project, whether a school project or a police headquarters, a fire department, fire building and stuff, there will be a building advisory committee set up. Generally speaking, the building advisory committee does not have any powers in terms of approval. It's really advisory ability, and it's typically there's a formula, there's a structure that's established in the code that talks about for school construction project. Typically, we have a board member involved and a common council member involved, the principal, a teacher, and a parent representation on the committee. So me and Jim as staff through the project development phase of the project, we work with the building advisory committee to work all the details and any issues, and that we try to address it as much as we can at that level. Picking colors for playgrounds, furnitures, and also the Board of Ed administration be involved in the whole conversation. So it's really an integrated process between the city and Board of Ed, but generally speaking, the city takes the lead in managing the various phases of project implementation. Jim, can you go to the next slide? So once the Board of Ed approves a project and submit a request to the city for capital funding, the city will take action by April 15 to approve funding for a specific project. The approval is very specific. So it's not like once you approve for, let's say, a Ponus school, we can only use the money for Ponus. So we cannot, without a special appropriation, to increase or decrease the amount in the budget. It's very specific. And the expenditure fund is really, it's by lack of a better word, me on behalf of the city. So the expenditure fund does not get signed off by Board of Ed members. Really, it's by staff. It's really the city staff, which is myself, to manage the project, to pay contractors, to hire consultants, and everything else in between necessary to implement the project. After the funding is allocated, the city, with help of Board of Education, will prepare a grant application to the state, and typically every year is before June 30th. So this is a grant application that includes a education specs and all the project descriptions, and they also require enrollment projection. I think it's, Jim, correct me, is it 8 years of projection or 10 years?
Yes, you have to go out 8 years.
Yeah, Jim's going to go in that a little further when you talk about the state process. So there's a lot of work involved in actually go online, and Nina from Board of Education is extremely helpful in working with us to work with the state to submit these applications. It's somewhat of a lengthy process, and we also have to come back to the board as well as city to get certain approval, because the state requires us, both bodies, to approve certain things within this process. After the state submission to the state, we begin to work with the city purchasing department to issue RFP for architects. So that's the RFP process. Again, is very lengthy. Sometimes we do RFQ, which is qualification, and then an RFP process, a two-step process. So we would hire the architect and go through, and then the land use and building management committee will recommend approval to the common council, and thereafter the mayor will execute the contract, and on and on. So let's just hire the architect. Then we start the process for hiring a construction manager. A construction manager's role is pretty interesting, because instead of the traditional general contractor, we hire a construction manager early in the process so they can help us to do a number of tasks, so that we don't go out to have the architect design something, and then by the time we go out to bid, the cost is not within the budget. So it's really a due relationship, a team process in terms of development design, as well as the cost of a budget for the projects. So after we hire the architect, hire the construction manager, there's a number of tasks that will be developed. So the team will, first thing we'll do, the architect will meet with, this is similar to what we do in Norwalk High School. We have hired the architect, and the architect is starting to the building programming phase. So we are meeting with the principals. There are two principals for the proposed Norwalk High School / PTEC school. We are meeting with them to go over the detail. We had educational specs, and what the design team will work with the school to do is go through the detail of it to see, how many, the room, generally speaking, size for a very specific size already, where we go into the carpentries and whether they need a sink or not need a sink, and on, and the common spaces, the bathrooms and everything else. So there's a whole kind of open dialogue with department chairs, department heads, the principal, and other teachers that may be involved in it. In Norwalk High School, we're also looking at to see, and I recognize that some students are very active in green building and ideas like that. So we are trying to see how we can get them integrated into the process, so they have a piece of the as a stakeholder into the process to be able to address some of their requests. So we formulate those relationships and structure to be inclusive of all the interested parties. The project team will also develop a schedule. So initially we would say, during the design, the budgeting process, we would say the project takes 4 months to do. But once we hire the architect, we start developing, and then the construction manager, we start looking at the schedule a little more carefully, because the schedule affects costs. The longer the project takes, because of cost escalation construction, we want to manage it. Also manage it to meet the seasonal schedule of education, in terms of we want to finish the school by, generally speaking, beginning of August every year, because we got to clean up, and then the teacher to kind of move in and set up the classroom and stuff like that. So development schedule is very critical to meet the scheduling. And also when we're talking about something similar to Ponus Lower School, it's going to be a STEAM school. So the hiring of teachers and everything else, and parents knowing where to go and stuff like that, it takes time for the Board of Ed to develop those schedules and student enrollment and parent issues, and bus drop off and pick up and all those things. So the schedule is quite important in the sense that we know how we're going to manage this, and especially on Ponus, the lower school, because we moved Jefferson into it. So there's a lot of strategy behind the scene that we have to be involved in to figure out the renovation schedule for Jefferson and how they move into. We got to have moving schedule to go into Ponus and on and on. So there's extensive thinking and strategizing behind the scene to get to where we are today. Preparing construction cost estimates and overall project budget. once we hire the construction manager, they would look at the design phase at multiple different phases. Typically, Oct has multiple phases. It's conceptual design, schematic design, design development, construction document phase, bidding phase, and construction administration phase. So during the design phases, the construction manager would develop cost estimate, probably 3 of them, based on the very specific end of each phase kind of thing, so that we kind of manage the project in terms of the budget, in terms of budgets. We, during this process, we submit all these projects to local approval as well as state approvals. Local approval include planning commissions, zoning commission, health department, building departments, and on fire department. And also, one of the things that Board of Ed staff also involved in the security with Joe Rio's office to go through our plans to evaluate safety, camera locations, and on, type of glass we use for the exterior of the building. And then the state approval, which Jim is going to get into a little later. Assess project phasing, similar to what I talked about before. We look at like Norwalk High School, it's multiple years of construction. I think we're projecting 42 months, which is 3.5 years. And how we continue to use existing building and phase out the construction, build a portion of the building first, demolish a portion of the existing building. All that needs to be very carefully evaluated. Value engineer is where you can potentially save substantial money in terms of project costs and how the project gets constructed. Typically the term we use is project constructability. All of those affect timing, costs, and ultimately the quality of the projects. Prepare and manage the bidding process. That's pretty straightforward. It's it's just what we do. Implement construction. That takes about 4 years, and there's a whole construction team that manages site, safety, requisition change order, meeting with school representatives to deal with all the, if there's a renovation during construction, the relationship between the construction manager and the principal is very, very important, because there's everything we do impact the school operation, noise, bus drop off, air quality, all of those need to be addressed throughout the construction project. So there's a weekly meeting we have, and the principal is involved in it, invited, and attends almost every week. And we always try to get them to finish first so that, doesn't hold too much of the time. We also have the response to manage the relationship with the state throughout the process. Again, this is something that Jim would get into a little bit more. At the end of the project, we would get certificate of occupancy, and then we would transfer, and then there's punch lists, and then we transfer the building to Bill Hodel, who managed the building from then on. So type of mechanical system, even the toilet fixture, we all have standards and what he wants, and all the warranties and everything else get forwarded to Bill, and then from then on it's his building. So generally speaking, this is this process. I think those are the 3 pages, right, Jim?
Yes.
All right, so you can continue to ask questions, and meanwhile, I think if nothing else, that maybe Jim can start going through the estate process.
Sure. So just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Alan has talked about, feasibility study is usually one of the first steps in a process of developing a construction project, developing what it is that fits the needs of the program that the Board of Ed is looking for, and develops the overall budget from what we will go to the city and ask and request a capital funding appropriation. When we're coming up with a feasibility study or looking at a project, the typical project types that we run across, especially here in Norwalk, are a renovate as new, which in the state's mind means bringing the entire building up to what they call a 20-year standard. And in order to get a renovate as new, you have to, or be granted renovate as new status, you have to submit a package to the state for them to approve that you can receive renovation as new status. And that package is a variety of questions that a design team puts together. They're very technical in nature. They request a lot of information on the mechanical systems, electrical systems, structural system, and architectural systems as well. What is the architect's opinion on the life expectancy of the window system? What's the engineer's understanding of the life expectancy of the wiring within the building? So, renovate as new. We kind of say, and we do have Jefferson as a renovate as new. It's a process. It's an extended process with the state in order to get that status. And one of the reasons why it's an extended process with the state is because it comes with a higher reimbursement rate than doing a new school. So typically, or Norwalk's reimbursement rate is 33.21%. That's for renovation as new, roof replacements, code violations, and certain alterations. When you do a new construction project, that project is about 10 basis points less than a renovate as new. So that would be Norwalk's reimbursement rate is 33.21. You would get 22.21% reimbursement on a new construction project. Now, recently, I'd say about 5-6 years ago, the state has taken a more proactive approach to determining whether or not a district is allowed to do a new school or a renovation as new. So if you have an existing building, and I guess one example would be when we were looking at the existing Columbus building as a renovate as new, we did a feasibility study. And as a result of that feasibility study, the architect came back and said, look, if you spend another $1.8 million, you can get a brand new school. And we talked to the state about that. And the state said, well, we're going to be the ones to determine whether you do a renovation as new or a new school. So when we were talking about the Columbus building, we did have a conversation with the state, and they said, we're going to send our architect down there and do a tour of the existing Columbus building, and we'll determine whether or not you should go renovate as new or new construction. And I think, Tom, you accompanied us on that tour with the state representative when they did that. That was about a year and a half ago. So, it's not as simple as saying, we're going to do a new, obviously, if you're going to do a new building on a new site, new program, it's pretty straightforward. But if you're getting into a renovation as new and the building is aged quite a bit, the state wants to take a closer look at that. And they want to be a part of the determining factor as to whether or not you're going to go forward as a renovate as new or a new construction project. Some of the other,
Jim, I'm sorry. I just want to add a couple of things. One is that when you look at a reimbursement, when you look at the state look at site improvements like ball fields or sports, I think they are 10% less, right? Or 50% of the reimbursable rate would be, right?
That's right. Yes. So you're doing a gymnasium. Your gym is fully reimbursed. However, if you have bleachers within the gymnasium, those are only reimbursed at 50% of your reimbursement rate. So if you're doing a new construction project and you get 22.21%, and you want to put in bleachers, you only get 11%. Same thing that goes with auditorium. Now, the state, I think it was about 7 years ago, had stopped reimbursing auditoriums for elementary schools. So what you do see now are a lot of renovate as new on older schools, elementary schools that have auditoriums because they want to maintain, the district wants to maintain, or this town wants to maintain that auditorium. They did stop reimbursing auditoriums for middle schools as well. However, they did reverse that decision and they will reimburse for auditoriums. Again, the auditorium shell, the walls and the roof are fully reimbursed, but the seating area, you are only allowed to have 50% of your enrollment being reimbursed. So if you have, simply put, if you have like Norwalk High School, if you have 2,000 students, the maximum seating capacity for your auditorium is 1,000 seats. And that too gets reimbursed at half your reimbursement rate.
Hey, Jim, I think it's worth noting that when you say full reimbursement or 33% reimbursement, you're reimbursing to the state standards. It's not that we could build
Correct.
Big classrooms or bigger than the state allows. We're under strict limits as to what we can do, correct?
That is correct. And that's a good point, Tom. So one of the things that we do during the feasibility study, and Alan mentioned it in his presentation, is that we look at the state has space standards to which we can build a size of a school, and it's all based on your enrollment. Depending on the makeup, the grade level makeup of the school will determine and what your enrollment is, what your highest 8-year projected enrollment, and now your highest 8-year projected enrollment can be the year that you're submitting the grant application. And that's what we did with Cranberry. Cranberry's 8-year highest projected enrollment happened to be the 2021 school year. I think it was 497. So that we were able to design a school for 497 students, upwards of 62,000 square feet.
And I just want to add two more things. One is that site acquisition, the state look at it only eligible at 50%, which is like 10%, roughly 11% of our reimbursable rate.
Right.
The other thing is off-site improvements, such as sidewalk and traffic signals and stuff off-site, is not reimbursable.
That's correct.
So those are things that we got to keep in mind when we talk. I mean, realistically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to us, but at the same time, that's how it is, right? I mean, you put in a traffic signal because of the school, but at the same time, is that they're not going to reimburse us.
Right. So any
part of the process or game that we have to go through, and so I just want everybody to know that. So
correct. Anything outside the property line of the school is not reimbursed. So if you did
we have this just for your information. When we look at Cranberry, we have a septic system that's across the street on a separate piece of property, and we did not anticipate that's going to be reimbursable. But lucky enough that the system is still in good shape, and we can get 15-20 years out of it without any issue. So we are not replacing the system. But at the same time, if we had to, that would not be reimbursable, even though it serves the school, but it's off-site improvement.
Correct. So other types of reimbursed projects, roof replacements are reimbursed at your 33.21%. However, the roof does need to be either within the end of the warranty or beyond the end of the warranty. So if you wanted to do a roof project for this summer, your warranty would have to end before you apply for your grant. And roof projects and certain other projects, what they call non-priority projects, which is kind of opposite of this whole notion of major construction projects. Non-priority projects consist of roof replacement, hazardous materials abatement. Those can be applied for any time throughout the year. So you get full reimbursement, but it's only the cost for which the work is being done on. So you can't, if there's any other work associated, maybe associated like painting a wall in an area where you're going to be removing flooring, that's not reimbursable. But if you have, for instance, the Silver Mine abatement project, that is reimbursed for removal and replacement of the flooring material and the rubber base only. So that goes into code violation, which is obviously codes, and they throw in hazardous material projects, abatement projects under that code violation acronym as well. And then there's an alteration project, which is specific upgrades, primarily if you want to get it reimbursed, programmatic changes to a school. For instance, when we did PONUS, obviously we did the elementary school addition, and then we did specific targeted renovations to the existing middle school. And only those changes, for instance, we added or we improved the indoor air quality by adding air conditioning. We also improved the life safety by adding a sprinkler system. Now, in a situation like that, the sprinkler system and the air conditioning systems are reimbursable, as well as any collateral damage as a result of the work being implemented. So, for instance, at PONUS, we had to tear down all the existing ceilings in order to put in the new sprinkler system and air conditioning system. So when those ceilings get torn down, sometimes the walls get damaged and marred and marked up as a result of that work. The state does allow the repainting of walls or any damage done as a result of doing that project to be reimbursed, but they do look at it very closely, and you have to be careful with what you're asking for to be reimbursed.
Well, as part of that project, the secondary benefit is that by doing the air conditioning and sprinkler system, we put in new ceilings and new lighting. So
Correct.
The room overall substantially is upgraded.
Correct. Any questions on the types of projects as a result of a feasibility study or an issue or? Okay. So one of the things that Alan touched on a little bit on when he was talking is this coordination between city approvals and state approvals. So when you do a grant application, there are specific resolutions that the state looks for. One is from the Board of Ed, and that is approving the educational specifications. And then 3 are by, or 4 are by the city. That is, preparing schematic drawings and an outline specification, authorizing the Board of Ed to apply to the commissioner to accept. And this is important too. Sometimes people don't realize when you submit a grant application and you are granted the grant, you don't have to accept it. You can accept or reject the grant application. And then there's the establishment of the building committee, and then the approval from the city or town of their share of the project costs. And this has changed over the years. The state used to make cities and towns approve the expenditure of the full amount of the project. Now they just want you to approve your share plus some contingency. And what that contingency consists of is when we get reimbursed by the state, and once we get what they call the grant commitment letter, which comes typically a year after we submit the grant application, we can start drawing down funds from the state. So we can't do that, however, until we do receive that grant commitment letter. So when we get funds from the state, it's on a it's on a 2-month turnaround. And it's not, some people think that it's a one lump sum after the project. It's not. It is a continual, especially on a long project like Norwalk High School, it will be a every 2-month process of filling out paperwork to the state requesting reimbursement. Now, one of the things that they do when they reimburse you is they hold back an 11% retainage. So when you're doing your city or town approvals for a school project, you have to incorporate that 11% retainage. And in addition to that, the state is not timely in their review of change orders for the most part. So you have to put in some kind of contingency in order to carry that cost until the state gets a chance to review those change orders. So, when you look strictly at, Norwalk's reimbursement rate is 33.21% of, of a certain dollar amount of a project, you have to ask for that plus the 11% retainage and a contingency for for change orders that may or may not be reimbursable later on in the project. So it's not a strict, 33.21% of the cost of the project. It's 33.21% plus a contingency.
I just want, since we talk about budgeting, and I just want to add this, that Jim and I has extensive conversation with the city's finance department in terms of cash flow for these projects. Polis is like $44 million, and Jefferson is $33 million, and Cranberry is $45 million, and on and on. We have long conversation and we do projection on cash flow because the city had to buy money, a certain portion of it, and how it's phased out in 4 years, 3 years, whatever it may be. It's essential for the city to know what those cash flows are, how we try to recover the money as a partial reimbursement and things like that. So there is a lot of work behind the scene to figure out the actual financial cost of the city throughout the few years that the project's in place.
Yeah. Any questions on resolutions and approvals? Okay. The grant application process. There's some major documents, and we kind of talked about these already. The educational specifications, obviously is a major document that's required by the state. The project budget, overall project budget, not just a construction estimate. The construction estimate has to be a professionally compiled construction estimate by a construction estimator. And it's the construction estimate and the project budget are done in multiple formats. You may hear somebody say a uniformat estimate. That is a specific industry wide estimate that the state requires. And then the state also requires a different format for the estimate as well. So we're not just submitting one estimate, we're submitting multiple estimates done multiple different ways. The enrollment projections and the approved, and this is important because it gets into a timing and sequencing approval of the meeting minutes, documenting the resolutions, and approval of the meeting minutes, documenting the educational specifications. Now, it's not the meeting where you approved the resolutions or the ed specs. It's the meeting minutes after that in which those meeting minutes have been approved. So it's kind of hard to explain at times. So let's say tonight you were going to approve the resolutions for a new project. It's not the meeting minutes for tonight that the state is looking for. The meeting minutes that the state is looking for are the next meeting where the meeting minutes were approved, where the resolutions were approved. So it gets a little confusing, and you have to understand that process so that way you leave yourself enough time to get meeting minutes approved at the following meeting. I know that's probably kind of confusing for everybody, and it does take quite a bit of time to understand that. And, you know, if you're, you know, I've done quite a few of them. You learn by making mistakes, you know, and then you learn not to make that same mistake ever again. So, and then there's the site form SCG 053. That is if you're doing a new site, purchasing a new site. And quite honestly, you have to do the SCG 053, even if it's a renovation as new or a minor alteration. They still want to see the site form. And there's also some other miscellaneous additional documentation that has to be submitted. And all this has to be done by June 30th. And then we submit that to the state. And we usually don't hear much. We may hear back from the state in October, requesting some additional information or some clarifications. And then December 15th of every year, the priority list is issued by Office of School Construction Grants and Review, of which typically the project that we submit would be on there. Any questions regarding grant application? Okay. Procurement is something that Alan already talked about. We have to publicly advertise for owner's project management representation. That's what I do. We have to publicly advertise for architect, construction manager, commissioning agent, and other professional services. There's code reviewers, there's threshold reviewers, there's material testing, a whole host of other support services that need to be procured and make sure that we have when we're going for our approvals. Any question on procurement? Okay. Programming, once we confirm and refine the ed specs, or it is a confirmation and refinement of the ed specs, we engage with the stakeholders, with the principal, and any teachers or department heads that the principal feels necessary for us to meet with. Other people that we meet with are the nurse, custodial, and facility staff, food service, where we review the ed specs. And really the ed specs or the programming phase, a lot of it is understanding the adjacencies of the different programs, of the different rooms, you know, what will work best if certain rooms are next to each other, who needs to be, you know, how important it is, the location of the principal, the nurse, so on and so forth. Any questions on programming? Okay, we're in that phase right now with Norwalk High School. So the design phase, we have the first part of the design phase is the schematic design, where they'll, you know, prepare an initial building layout, classroom adjacencies, and this is all based off of the meetings that we've had with the principals and the teachers and the department heads. And we'll, or the architect will prepare that initial building layout. We also take a look a little bit at, you know, how it fits on the site, and some preliminary site layout, as well as some initial and preliminary aesthetics of the building. Typically in the schematic design, we're looking mainly at the exterior aesthetics of the building. Once we're done with schematic design, depending on the size of the project, the schematic design can last from a month to 4 months.
Jim, I think what we presented to the Board of Education Facility Committee as well as Land Use recently, about a month ago, is the schematic phase, the schematic design phase for Cranberry.
Correct.
We presented at that time with Cranberry. That's what it was. It was schematic design phase presentation.
That's right. So after schematic design is done, the state wants to take a look at the progress that we're making, and we have to go up to the state and have them do a schematic design review meeting. And along with that meeting is a checklist of requirements that need to be incorporated into the documents. And in this case, in the schematic design, the majority of the documents are just drawings. We don't really get into specifications at that time. So once that's done and the state reviews the schematic design and they give their approval, we move on to design development. And design development is just a refinement of the agreed upon schematic design. We start to develop the building specifications. And we get more into the details of how the building is put together. Again, once design development has been completed, again, we have to fill out another checklist and go up to the state for their review. And if we get an okay from the state, we then move on to construction documents. And just so you know, design development is usually the longest design period. That can take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. And once that's done and we get our approval from the state, we move on to the construction document phase. And that's where we're adding more detail to the design development drawings and refining the specifications further. And this is where this is the most important review in order for us to go out to bid, is the plan completion review, the PCR meeting. And this is where you see us coming to both land use meeting and Board of Ed meeting for you to review the final set of drawings and estimate and specifications. I know, we've done that recently on a couple of projects, and that's the state process, or the state required process, that we have to go to the building committee and the Board of Ed with a full set of drawings and specifications and the estimate and say, here they are, we're ready for approval. Please approve them so we can go to the state and have them approve it. Any questions on that process? Okay, here's a copy of a conceptual schematic design review checklist. It's one of, or 2 pages of 5. So construction, once we get the approval after the plan completion review, the state will issue a letter stating that we are approved to go out to bid. So now we start the permitting process with the city, where we give them the final drawings and ask them to issue a permit based on those final drawings. Now, what's good about Norwalk and how they do their reviews is the city has a preliminary review because the city has to sign off on the drawings and specifications in order for us to go to the plan completion review process with the state. So the city has kind of a heads up. They know what's coming. They know what to expect when we come and give them the permit drawings. So it does expedite the permitting process for us. We go out for trade contractor bids. We receive those bids. We work with the city's purchasing department in coordination with them and their requirements. Once we receive all the bids, the construction manager assembles the guaranteed maximum price. And within that time frame, hopefully we're getting the building permit. Then we start construction. And usually after we start construction, about a month or 2 after we start construction, we start to finalize the fixtures, furniture, and equipment design and procurement. That is a whole nother design process and approval process that we have to go through with the state. And then we, after we get that approved, we do the procurement of the FF&E, again, going through the city's purchasing department. We put together a schedule for FF&E delivery and or move management. Move management was very important when it came to PONUS because we were utilizing existing furniture. And we had to temporarily move furniture into the new addition in order for the middle school students to have furniture. And that was a lot of moves. That was a lot of coordination with storage, moving furniture, accepting new furniture, disposition of old furniture, so on and so forth. And then finally, you have the certificate of occupancy that usually comes, sometimes you can get what they call a temporary certificate of occupancy if there's one or two items that need to be resolved and they can't be life safety items. Otherwise, you don't get your certificate of occupancy. Any questions regarding the construction process? Okay. And then we have the closeout and audit phase. And this is the phase that we're currently in with the PONUS project. And closeout, you would think that the hard part is over, construction is over, and, all we have to do is compile some paperwork and give it to the state and we're done. It's really not that easy. We have to finalize and reconcile all the change orders. We have to reconcile all the costs with the construction manager. We have to receive all the warranties and additional materials. So it is a long process to do that. So once we get the final requisition from the construction manager, the final payment that we have to pay them, we'll put together what they call an SCG 049F for the state and submit that to the state and say, this is our last request for payment. Our project is done. The Board of Ed, and this is another thing that has to happen during the closeout phase, is we will be coming to the Board of Ed to request that the Board of Ed accept the PONUS project as complete. And again, those have to be documented in meeting minutes, and then we have to get the minutes of the approved meeting where the acceptance was completed. That all has to be submitted to the state, and then we await the state to do their audit of the project. Any questions? Is everybody awake?
I'm hungry for dinner.
Thank you, Alan and Jim. It is an awful lot of information. Does anyone have questions? I mean, it's often easier to think about this in specific projects because there's just so many different facets of this. We can talk about any of the specifics if you want, everything from PONUS or Cranberry or Jefferson or Norwalk High or New South Norwalk.
Tom, I think for folks that are interested in some of this stuff, if you look at the land use agenda for tonight, the Board of Ed section has like 7 items. You can see we have an item for Cranberry Energy Agreement. We have an item for AV Tucci, who's the construction manager for Narrow Mix School Kitchen Improvement Project, which is a guaranteed maximum price, which is authorize the mayor to sign the contract with them to start the implementation of the construction for Narrow Mix School Kitchen. And then thereafter, we have approval of Gilbane Building Company, who we interviewed it. And this is signing a contract with them to do pre-construction services. And the amount doesn't seem like a lot, but at the same time is that it is approving a contract. That ultimately, that contract would be somewhere around, because they had got to bid later on. So we anticipate to be somewhere about $160 million.
That's obviously for Norwalk High School.
At Norwalk High School.
Yeah.
And then you go on to the next one is for submitted by Bill Hodel, which is Brian McMahon, indoor air quality item. Went out to bid, but this item is going to be, I guess, postponed because of some technical issues. And then the Silvermine School, asbestos flooring project is on the agenda. And then thereafter, number 7, it's we have developed a strategy to see how we can expedite the implementation of middle school bathroom renovations. We have decided to do it in 2 phases. One of the interesting one of the interesting scheduling issues that we have is that by the time Common Council approve capital budget in April, it's really almost impossible to get the work done this summer, because by the time you approve because at that time we don't know what's being approved and what's not. Upon approval, then we got to go out for a proposal for architects, and then we got to go for approval process to approve the architect. Then they got to design the project, prepare the bid documents. Then we got to go out to bid. After bidding, we got to go for approval process, sign a contract. So the process we have financially when we approve capital budget in April is very, very difficult to get that project started in the fall, the same summer. So just like this project here on the bathroom for middle school. So what we are doing, we break it down in 2 phases. Early phase of this year to really do the initial improvements so that we can get some of the low-bearing fruit and take care of those issues that we have. And then the major portion of the project is going to be in year 2022. So there's a lot of behind the scenes strategy with how do we implement these projects. So I just want everybody to know that there are quite a bit of stuff on this land use agenda every month about school project that a lot of time we don't see. And then the relationship between the city and Board of Ed, it's really entrenched in the 2 committees' relationship. That's it.
Everybody's always welcome to come to land use if they'd like.
I just have a question, and because I'm new to this and new to the facilities committee, is there any advice you could give that historically you see where we could do this process better, that we kind of always had the same place where we wind up at the same hurdle, that there are some systemic things that you wish that we could change?
Alan, do you want to try that answer that? I have some thoughts, but you want to go, you've been around this a lot longer
Well,
than I have.
this has come up from Tom Hamilton a couple of times. I think he might have mentioned to the board.
Tom's on, you know, Alan.
Huh?
Tom
Tom
is on.
Hamilton. Oh,
He's
Tom's
on,
here?
Tom.
Yeah, I hear you, Alan.
Careful
Oh,
what
I
you
know how to
say.
speak for you then, right? It's exactly what we talk about financially. It's just the capital budget process and the need, the desire to be to expedite project this summer. It's almost impossible. I mean, with this lot of effort that we had to put in, try to do something that summer, but it's almost. And then I think Tom has talked about potential. Maybe we can request them. We can't. I don't think we can change the capital budget scheduling process, but at the same time, potentially, if there's a project that we have to implement this summer, we should be requesting the money last September or something. So we got the money approved in the special appropriation and give staff an opportunity to hire the architect, design the package, and then we also some of the project we require to go to state for approval for reimbursement. That takes 9 months altogether, kind of thing. So the way the project is set as a capital budget process set up and the need to implement project the same summer, it's almost impossible. So we really exception to the rule if we were trying to do something the same summer. But
Right. So if I can just compound on that, what Alan is saying is plan this year, implement next year. That's probably best served for everybody's allocation of time. I'll be presenting later the Silver Mine Asbestos project. That money was approved last year. I'm doing it now this year. Again, that timing process is important if we want to get large jobs approved and by various city agencies and state agencies, as Alan and Jim mentioned. You definitely need that time. Otherwise, it's a crunch time and you tend to make mistakes.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, from the out, I'm an outsider, and from the outside looking in, I think that's the best approach that you can take, because I see Bill scrambling every spring, trying to get summer projects done that were just approved in April. And if you can get on, once you get on that schedule, it becomes, it just becomes automatic. If you, approve the year before and then do it the following summer, it would make for better management of those projects.
Yeah, it's a matter of setting expectations because unfortunately, as you go through the capital budget process, people think, it's going to happen immediately. But the reality is on these construction type projects, it just frequently can't be done effectively in that short a period of time, where you're actually in construction literally a month and a half after, because we have to get on a project really of any size. Bill needs to be, and these are not even, you know, Alan and Jim's projects, but just the smaller ones that go to Bill. We really need to be on the ground and in construction literally the day after school ends for the summer, and start on June 19th or whatever the day is, because we have to be, you know, we need to open the doors again when school opens at the end of August.
Yeah, Suzanne, I was going to echo what Tom just said. I think a lot of it is managing expectations. I think as the, you know, the Board of Education in the city, I think we do very well as a whole, coordinating the building projects, largely thanks to Jim and Alan. I think there's, you know, I don't think there's a lot of space there. I think what happens is maybe the one-offs come up, maybe parents are asking for something. And I think we need to talk more and, you know, have more transparency among all of us, so we're all on the same page. That's what these meetings are hopefully going to help us do.
Yeah,
Because in addition to the capital projects that we talked about, and as I mentioned, the silver mine asbestos, I also get involved with a lot of smaller projects that are not necessarily reimbursable. You know, a principal wants X, Y, and Z done over the summer. So that is another allocation of time. That money's out of a different pot, but it still takes time, and I need to allocate the forces accordingly. So proper planning and as much as we can do in advance is very important for this process.
yeah. As we look at construction schedule in the summertime, we look at like June 22nd or something like that. And then we have to complete it by August 15th. So really like 2 months, because by the time August 15th comes, we got to clean up, and then, you know, and then again, there's staff move back in, and the school starts in August 27 or something like that. So the construction period is really limited, 2 months, and especially when you do a project that has like boiler, which has this potential asbestos in the you can't. It's very difficult. And then now we have summer program, most of the school. That's another more difficulty in terms of getting the space, because once we do abatement, we don't want to have the kids in the school while we're doing it. So it does get very complex. So timing, budget process, and timing construction, it's a struggle for us. If anything could be improved on, I think long-term planning and ask the money earlier, and then we can get it done the following summer kind of thing. It's something we should really look into.
It's interesting to note that I don't view this process and the capital budget process here with the school projects as being similar. I mean, the same as the operating budget, which gets very political. I think over the past number of years, we've been very much aligned on all these projects. I think the council has been very supportive of the school's building program for the most part. I know that there may be areas that some might not agree, but I think all in all, you know, we're all pretty much on the same page and trying to upgrade all the schools within our budget constraints. So, you know, as I said, it's not the same type of project as issues as the operating budget, where you get a lot of politics, quite frankly. And I think that our goal, at least my goal, and I think the committee's goal, is to try to minimize that political side of this, and just trying to get together and talk them through before they become political, if possible. Other questions, thoughts? Yeah, Mike.
I just thought I'd say one thing that I hear, you know, definitely what you're saying there, the lead times and the craziness we have to go on with the state's regulations are, you know, really the big challenge here. And we can't, you know, they don't make it any easier for us. And so I think that, you know, with respect, Suzanne, to your question, you know, we jump through as many hoops as we can and try to meet all these deadlines. And, you know, it's just not a user-friendly process, and it's not, you know, but it's not a process of our doing. The one thing I think everybody needs to think about, which has really been, you know, a legacy all of us have inherited, is, you know, we own 20 campuses, and the average life of these buildings is 20 years. And I think there was talk of life expectancy of 20 years. So that means every one of our buildings, every year we should be renovating one building conceptually. And I've been on the Board of Ed for 10 years. We've done one project, which is PONUS. So, and even less was done before I was elected. I mean, McMahon, Brookside, and Kendall, I guess, but we definitely have not been doing one building a year. And so that's why, I mean, if you go to Cranberry School, I mean, that place, it's unbelievable how, I mean, it's like out of a movie set. It's so old. And, you know, from the 50s and the single pane windows and all sorts of stuff. And we know security standards and environmental standards, everything's changed over the years, but we really need to get in the mindset that every year we should be processing a project. And I know, you know, now we have a lot on the plate, you know, with Jefferson and Cranberry. But at the end of the day, you know, we should be doing a project a year to keep on top of these buildings. And even McMahon, I mean, McMahon's, you know, that's getting close to, 20 years old.
2003.
Yeah.
2000,
That's
2000,
18.
2004.
That's 18 years ago. So it's just, I think we just need to get that and that mindset. And there should be, you know, almost like a schedule of like, I mean, once we get caught up.
Well, yeah, well, therein lies the tension though, Mike, of course, because, you know, redoing a school every year, it gets expensive, right? Particularly when we're playing catch up on other ones. Anyway, Barbara.
Yeah, Mike, I just want to comment on that. And I think that, what we're dealing with right now is so many years of neglect prior to these new projects. And so it feels like a lot. But yeah, the schools had been neglected for so long. And I think the idea of eventually getting into that cycle where we're looking at, improvements on a yearly basis to, individual schools I'd like to see us get there as well. But I know, at this point, we've got some major projects that we've got to get through first. And I think, the state, again, to echo what you were saying, Mike, and to speak to Suzanne, your questions, in a perfect world, the state wouldn't be so cumbersome. And it does take a long time, every aspect of it. And every I needs to be dotted and every T needs to be crossed, and there can be delays. If there's a minor mistake made, we wait months and months for decisions from the state. It's a long, long process.
Other comments? David?
Well, just to camp onto that I agree that, we need to, we're playing a lot of catch up, but I think that to Chairman Livingston's point is that it's managing expectation that we need to be better at. And I think that's going to go a long way to helping us down the road to get caught up and have, the public go along with us and understand that we are moving the ball forward. And I think that's what's going on right now with the projects that we have in the pipeline, is we are getting things done and trying to, sort of, fix the years of neglect, so to speak.
Diana?
On my end, I think that, we were talking about opening communication, and yes, the schools need a lot of help, and I understand the financial side and I understand the facility side because I'm both committees. But after, sitting down and having a conversation with Tom, I think it's very important that the city and the Board of Ed understand each other. And we've actually discussed, going to the schools together and having different conversations where he's looking at it one way, I'm looking at it another way, and having conversations where we can agree on certain projects, on certain schools, certain repairs, certain, building new. And I think that's what the problem has also been, is that, the Board of Ed thinks one way and the city thinks the other way, but no one has gotten together to actually look at things together and have these discussions together. So these meetings that we are going to have moving forward, it's going to open that line of communication, and we can ask each other questions and, think about the different problems and issues and the finances also. So, I'm very thankful for this, and it also helps the public understand that it's not something that can be done, overnight. I know that the public has questions about, why it takes so long. And this tonight explains that. It explains the process, it explains it to new board members. And it's just, we're moving forward and we're gonna move forward together and have these conversations. And thank you, everybody, for this evening.
Yeah, thank you. And then one thing I like to add, if we could have maybe a goal of, when the Board of Education comes up with their capital budget request list, that maybe that's something as we can sit down together and talk about before it goes out. I mean, just maybe walk through them together to make sure we're all on the same page. Not that we're necessarily going to agree about everything, but at least we can talk it through. That'd be helpful. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Thank you to Diana and to the superintendent, other members of the Board of Education and the council for participating tonight. We hope to do this, as Diana said, more regularly, hopefully at least once a quarter. And we welcome suggestions and for other topics to cover. I know this is kind of a dense one, but I think it's an important one for us all to listen, to understand as much as we can, given that so much of what we do is involved with the state. And they dictate so much of what we can do. So again, I thank you. I thank Jim and Alan. We couldn't do any of this without them. So appreciate all their hard work. And thank you. Okay.
Thank you
All
for
right.
putting us together.
Okay. And have a good night. Members of the land use, we're going to meet again in about 10 minutes. Go grab a bite. And anybody's welcome to join us if they want.
Are we gonna log it back into the same meeting?
Alan, I think we are, right?
It's the only.
Same, it's the only invite that we got.
Yeah, then we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
correct, yes.
All right, cool. So 10 minutes,
Yeah, well, yeah, 9 minutes now.
9
Okay.
minutes. Okay,
All
got
right,
it.
thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye, thank you.
Recording back on.
It is now 7:32 on Wednesday, June 2nd. I'd like to call this, I guess it's a special meeting of the Land Use and Building Management Committee to order. I'm Tom Livingston, the chair. With us tonight, our members of the committee are David Hildeman, Barbara Smith, Tom Keegan, Nick Satinelli, and Kadeem Roberts. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. All right, is there anybody who wants to speak at public participation?
Looks like we do.
Okay,
We have Diane Lauricella with her
okay.
hands raised. Diane, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I didn't know if, am I supposed to put on my camera? Or I don't know if you.
It doesn't matter, Diane, you can just speak.
Okay, all right, I'm glad you're offering that, but I'm not ready today. Anyway, good evening, Diane Lauricella. It's really great to have a joint meetings, and I really think that you and Diana were very wise, and it was a great, I did listen in to the entire presentation. I think it will be helpful in many cases. I'm here tonight to speak about tonight's meeting agenda. First of all, I wanted to see if this committee could put a pin in the following. I have a question under the old biz in the minutes related to the underground storage tanks. I would like to get a copy as things are progressing of the actual cost per school or per underground storage tank of each of the removals. That is because I believe that some of the cost you will have if there are soil spilling or pollution, contamination could have been avoided with different management planning and not waiting till the useful life. In other words, and I've mentioned this before, I, as a former regulator in the state of Connecticut, found that all of these underground tanks are ticking time bombs. I'm very happy that they're being removed, but the way that this was planned could lead to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of additional spending that we don't have. My main brief discussion is for tonight. And it's related to what was discussed at the 6 p.m. meeting. And that is that we can make quite a difference and reduce the cost of operating our schools, our facilities, by employing some modern thinking and actually changing the paradigm or the culture, where many of you, several of you spoke about how you're looking for instance, I think Alan said in one of the projects that they want to integrate student interest in green design. While I'm no longer a student in high school or middle school, it has been several years that I've attempted to get this committee, and some of you are new to the committee, many of the same staff, but others, to take a look and lead by example to incorporate clean energy right up front. I'm asking tonight on each of the following agenda items, and I'll be very brief, that we ask the question. I have the question. So my first question was about the USTs, or the underground storage tank soil. Is there a listing of what the actual costs are per school of the contamination, the total cost? Number two, for the following agenda items, are we planning, or why can we not plan to incorporate roof-mounted and ground-mounted solar and create electrons to reduce the cost of operating the school, which is in the operating budget, Tom? It's not political, and I know what you were referring to, and I agree, but the cost of gasoline, natural gas, electricity, oil, those are in the operating budget, just the way it works out. And they're not political. In fact, what's political is we want, especially in our party, we want to reduce those costs so we can use them for books and other curriculum. So in item B under building management, the YMCA building, I know you're talking about a partial lease extension. I wanted to know, what is the status of that site working with the YMCA to incorporate solar on the roof? There is a new roof there. The city still owns the building. This has been an ongoing issue. C, under a Sono Library, again, a very good project that's on the books. Are we looking at, especially with the architectural team that could help you with this, is incorporating solar on the roof or ground mounted to reduce the cost of electricity? Under D, school construction in the updates, is PONUS's solar online yet? And if so, when did it begin and what is the megawatts amount? Under item D2, with Eversource, I ask you to consider placing this request on hold just for a month, unless and until you have contacted the Northeast Energy Partnership with John Balfe. That is free advice to school districts and cities about public buildings and looking at net zero energy buildings or schools. Before we enter into an agreement with Eversource, who is only giving up to 10% reduction on the energy use intensity, or EUI, I don't think that's enough. I think it's terrific we're looking at use of electricity as in the whole building approach. However, I want to see us create electricity through the use of solar on the Cranberry School. And to my knowledge, I still don't feel we're optimizing that. And I do believe even with the wetlands, we can include ground-mounted solar to, again, for that school to reduce the operating costs of that school. Number 3 with Narragansett, and I've asked about this before. I'm asking questions so they can be answered either to me.
So Diane, could you, I know.
I'll wrap it up. It's a long agenda, unfortunately. So
I know, that's why I want to wrap it up, because we got a lot to cover. Go ahead.
all right. The space for school food scrap recovery and recycling in Narragansett School. I'm sad that the kitchen isn't going to be done, so we could get rid of the trays so they can begin washing trays. The new Norwalk High School, is that particular new school going to include solar? And lastly, with the air quality for Brian McMahon and MCOR, if John Bath for New England or Northeast Energy Partnership is just given a chance to take a look, I do believe that we can reduce the cost of operating Brian McMahon, provide a more comfortable school so that the air quality that MCOR is being almost $250,000 being hired to improve, at least it would be a much more holistic approach. And with that, I thank you for letting me speak. I will be following up with other ideas and questions as I have for years. And I wanted to come on the record because I'm quite frankly, quite frustrated that some of these very simple things that other school districts are doing, and I know you'll be told, I'll just wind it up. You'll be told by your staff and their consultants that they do everything they can to include this. But lastly, there was a special conference or webinar about use of the American Rescue Plan monies. Those need to be optimized so we can reduce the cost to the taxpayer. And I'm not assured that that is going to happen. So my last question is, how are we using the ARP, American Rescue Program, to help with all of these important school projects on the books, on the agenda tonight and in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Just the last point, I believe Alan had 2 people attend that seminar that you referenced. But let me go on. Anybody else sign up to speak, or did we receive anything? No one?
I did not receive any requests.
Okay, has anybody else signed up to speak tonight? Hearing none, then I'll close public participation and move to the minutes of the meeting, May 5th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve? Mr. Huberman, thank you. Are there any changes, additions? Ms. Smith?
Just one addition, on page 6, 5th paragraph, where Ms. Smith said that there had been concerns from parents regarding having 2 separate schools with 2 different educational philosophies in the same building. I just wanted to note that I also stated that I would like to be sure that the Columbus family is included in the discussions and plans for that school.
Are those the specific words you want, or is this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other comments? I had one change myself, which is on page 12. It says, Mr. Livingston said he had lunch with the BOE staff. What I said is I had lunch with the chair of the Board of Education Facilities Committee, not the staff. All right. If there are no other comments, I'll call for a vote on the minutes as amended. All in favor, raise your hands. 2, 3. Opposed? Abstentions? 1 abstention, Mr. Keegan, and everybody else is in favor. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to new business. The first item A1, is on the Norwalk Historical Society. And before I get into the business, I'm going to try and keep the meeting moving tonight because we've had a long night already. And I'd like to see if we can do this in reasonable time. So anyway, first item with that, David, I'll go into it. Review request from Norwalk Historical Society entering an assistance agreement relating to the production of a Norwalk exhibit and refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an assistance agreement with the Norwalk Historical Society for the production of a permanent exhibit of Norwalk's history from 10,000 BC to 1835 for the townhouse at Mill Hill Historic Park for a total not to exceed $84,000. Account noted. We have a motion. Ms. Smith, thank you. David Westmoreland.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try and be brief. I just wanted to start out and give a little bit of history because some of you may not be familiar with the relationship that the city has with the Historical Society. The Historical Society is a private nonprofit 501c3. They've been in existence since the 1890s. For the last 70, 80 years, they've had a public-private partnership with the city of Norwalk, and has done programming mainly at Mill Hill over the years, working with the city in the last 10 years to restore everything and bring everything up to date, put in new exhibits in the buildings and things like that. A significant change to that relationship was in 2013. If you go back to 2012, the decision was made to close the city-operated museum, the Norwalk Museum, that was in the building, the old City Hall on South Main in South Norwalk. That museum, the city had acquired a very large collection over the years. And the museum was in a rented building that cost $12,000 a month. And for various reasons, the decision was made to shut that down. In 2013, the Historical Society and the city entered into an outsourcing arrangement where the Historical Society would help the city renovate the Lockwood House building, which is the red brick building, looks like a house next to the health department in the City Hall complex, and operate that as a museum, and as well as managing the city's substantial and very valuable collection of art and objects related to Norwalk's history. Part of the outsourcing agreement is that the city would provide support for the Historical Society's efforts. It's not, detailed in really in any way other than that. But what we've done, you may have seen some of the interpretive signs we've put at Mill Hill and the cemeteries, and we'll be installing in Matthews Park this summer. The society pays for all the research and all the graphic design, and then the city, through the Historical Commission, is paid for the production of those signs. For temporary exhibits, things that the Historical Society does, the Historical Society has raised the funds and done all that. But what we're proposing is a permanent exhibit that will, the definitive permanent exhibit that will tell the history of Norwalk from 10,000 BC, which includes the geological history, the formation of how our landscape became what it is, to inhabitants by indigenous peoples, and then by settlement by Europeans up through 1835. We generally cover through colonial history at Mill Hill. So the Historical Society, after the city approved $84,000, which we intend to use for paying for the production of the exhibit in last year's capital budget, the Historical Society received about $50,000 in grants from the Connecticut Humanities, and then raised the rest of the money privately, and has spent to date $125,000. And they produced, designed and produced this exhibit. I attached a couple sample pages of the design. It's very, very high quality exhibit, world famous exhibit designers. Many eyes and historical experts have been involved in developing the text and choosing the illustrations and the objects that are going to go in the exhibit. So it's a world-class exhibit, on par with anything that any of the major museums have. So there's $121,000 left to actually produce and install the exhibit. The Historical Society's target is to get the exhibit installed and opened in September of this year. We're looking to get the city's portion of the funds. The Historical Commission will oversee, payment of the invoices. Everything has actually already been bid out because the Connecticut Humanities is funded by the state. We followed state purchasing guidelines. There are multiple bids on everything, and all that paperwork will be given to the city. That's kind of really all I have. The idea being that at the museum at City Hall, once we're done with this, we'll do a similar exhibit that will cover from 1835 to present, mainly the industrialization, Victorian period of Norwalk, and then everything that happened in the 20th century up to today. And so there'll be kind of two sites to visit to get the full picture, but take advantage of everything that we have. And then Historical Society will continue to supplement that with ongoing seasonal exhibits to display art and, many other things and items of interest in history. So any questions that you might have? Barbara?
Yeah, thanks, David. That was a really great synopsis of the history. My question is, where specifically will this exhibit be?
So we designed it to go on the perimeter walls of the townhouse in the main room. So it's going to go around the room on the walls there'll be some items, some objects displayed in front, but we didn't want to compromise the use of the space as a multi-purpose meeting space for many other things. So we've designed it so that it all goes around the perimeter. And we expect it to be in place for 20 plus years. We've also designed it if there are things that need to be updated, like we're anticipating getting artifacts from the Indian fort site, we'll be able to incorporate those and things like that. So it's kind of designed so that it can be updated along the way, but it's also designed to be out of the way, more or less.
I just have to, I loved that old Norwalk Museum. I visited it quite a few times, and I really loved it. I mean, you've done a beautiful job with the Lockwood House. It's terrific, but I do miss that old museum. It was fun.
It was a fun museum. We're actually planning to recreate Dunn's Hardware, and that exhibit will be actually in the ground floor of the health department, which will be a whole, we have the whole ground floor. We're going to be turning that into exhibit space as well.
Terrific.
So,
David, if you put this up and you say it's 20-year exhibit, does that mean you won't have other exhibitions in the Mill Hill?
No, we have, we'll have the space in the middle of the room where we'll do other things. But we're largely going to focus our changing exhibits at the museum. Mill Hill, we have a narrative of history there that we cover, and this is to support that, particularly the third grader program where all the third graders in the Norwalk school systems come. It's part of the school system's curriculum to learn about history, and that's the period we cover, 10,000 BC to 1835, but it does not in any way preclude us from using the space for other things as well. But we're setting up the Norwalk Museum, the Museum by City Hall. We'll be using 2 of those rooms for the exhibit that goes 1835 to present, and then the remaining 5 or 6 rooms will be ongoing changing exhibits. So we think we have pretty good space for changing exhibits as well.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hands. Okay, it is unanimous. Okay, thank you, David.
Great, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
You too. All right, B1, review the request to extend interim license agreement with YMCA for 98 South Main Street and refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rillick to execute an amendment to the interim license agreement with the Riverbrook Regional Young Men's Christians Association for the occupancy of portions of 98 South Main Street building to provide community service programs by extending the agreement period from July 1, 2021 to December 31, 2021. All remaining terms of the agreement to remain unchanged. Do I have a motion? Mr. Sacinelli, thank you. We have Bob McDowell here. Bob, do you want to talk about this all?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Livingston, and good evening, everyone, all the committee members and Alan. We've been in the building, and thanks to the agreement that you set forth before, since March 1st, and we're continuing into pandemic mode a bit, and that's the main reason why we're asking for this request. But that didn't stop us from continuing our planning to renovate the facility, upgrade different elements of the facility. We now have a full-time staff person in the facility along with a part-time person. So we are, staffed in the facility. We are working on cleaning the facility, everything from waxing floors, painting, had cleaning service in all around the first floor and a little bit of the second floor, actually. with the exception of where the AmeriCares agency is. We are in the process. We've signed contracts for fire security sprinklers with ADT and the security to be completed by mid-June. Our wireless access points are going in, our wireless installations going in. So there's a lot of things, new phone system. So there's some investment going on right now in the facility. So just to show you our commitment as we move forward, as we gear up for some extensive programming this fall. Other commitments that we have going currently, we are tomorrow releasing to, I believe it's 10 architectural firms in and around Fairfield County that were recommended to us, and we researched them. So we hired a consulting group to help us vet that process. So that RFQ will be released tomorrow. We expect to interview and select an architect of record for the renovations by sometime in mid to late July. So that will be happening. And then that process will continue after design is being drawn up. We will then work to release some release some RFQs and an RFP for either construction management firm or general contractor. And we're also looking into vetting owners representatives. So that portion's going on underway. We've also invested now in a fundraising consultant to help us work through that process as we are continuing to have discussions with major donors about this initiative. And we're also discussing some CHIFA with CHIFA management and leadership in terms of financing and potential new market tax credit program. The other thing that we're doing and is working with the Harvard Business School community partners and in continuing to survey verbally with key stakeholders. I think there's 15 of those interviews right now that are in process, and we have issued and put out a survey to the residents within a 2-mile radius of the facility in both Spanish and English. So we will have those results at our board meeting later this month. So we are committed. We will be holding a camp there this summer in conjunction with the Norwalk Housing Authority for about 30 children. We used to hold the camp at Brian McMahon, but we moved the camp to 98 South Main Street for the summer. So that is almost full right now and is completely subsidized. So that will be a program. We also submitted a list of programs that will begin to roll out after, into July, into August, and through the end of the year. All of these programs will not be affected by any renovation at this point because we'll still be in that design phase and then bid process. We would expect renovations to begin hopefully before the summer, but you never know. It could be by the summer if all goes well with the bid process and the design process. And just to go on record with the question that was asked before on the public phase, we are looking into all of the type of LEED certification type building. We'll see what that brings. And if also we would be looking into the solar panels, as I had mentioned before. So we're requesting a continuation of the license agreement so we continue to operate. I will tell you the pandemic has had an extreme effect on our YMCA. Our balance sheet was dramatically affected, but we are beginning to stage a comeback at this point now that the government has released some of the restrictions on our organization. So we did receive PPP funds to keep us floating, 2 rounds of that, and we're waiting on the employee retention tax credit to come through. So cash is there. We're ready to go. And we just need this extra 6 months to continue to work up and build a program base and continue to plan. And we're all intentions to sign the lease for, as was stated before, on January 1st, 2022.
right, well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. I want to add, we've had a lot of discussions with Bob and the Y over the last year and a half, and things certainly have not gone the way any of us anticipated, what with COVID and all. But I have to say that, working with Bob and the Y, they have been there the whole time with their commitment. And even when we talked before this meeting, I asked Bob to show their commitment, and I think he's done that more than I expected, and I appreciate that. And I think you're just asking for a 6-month extension. I think that's more than reasonable. So I think it's well warranted. Other questions or comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
You
Good
too.
night.
Okay, item C1, Norwalk Public Libraries. Review recommendation to hire architect for design services at the South Norwalk Library. Refer recommendation to the Common Council for action. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Silver Petroselli and Associates to provide architectural design services for the South Norwalk Library for a total not to exceed $12,300. I guess account noted. Do I have a motion? Mr. Sacchinelli, thank you. We have Ms. Harris here tonight. Cheryl, do you want to speak to this at all?
Sure. I'd like to thank everyone for letting me come before you this evening. And I don't know if David is still on, but David Westmoreland and our two library board.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
He's left. Go ahead.
Oh, he did. Okay. Well, David and Sharon Benante and Mary Mann, who are two of our library board members, were a part of this process to help us vet the prospective firms. So this project is part of a approved repurposing project, which was approved in the capital budget cycle 2017-2018. What happened is the reading room and the computer rooms are so small, and we needed professional help basically to help us maximize that space because right now we have lots of demands for programs and then also for just meeting space. So we need to maximize that space, but in a way that we can repurpose the room if we need an extra meeting space or if we need room for another program. So, the library underwent a renovation in between 2004 and 2006. So we're not going to do another expansion for the Sono Branch Library, but we thought that we would enlist a professional to help us, update the room as well as repurpose it.
One question I had was that, and you did respond to me by the email, but I thought you can tell the committee.
Sure.
Silver Petroselli was not the lowest bidder. You could explain your thought process there.
Sure. So there were 4 firms and we chose 3 to interview. The lowest bidder we thought was good, but they did not have any municipal experience at all. And we were just afraid that, you get what you pay for and that the process might not go as smoothly as we thought. Silver Petroselli has experience with the city, and we just thought that they would be the firm to really help us maximize that space, update it, modernize it, and they're already familiar with the city, the city process.
Any other questions, comments?
Tom, this is Alan. For the action, I just want to amend the action to reflect the proper account number. The account is actually 09186210 5777C0605.
All right, then we need a vote on that amendment. I guess we have to move the amendment. A motion to approve. Mr. Hooverman moves the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Okay, unanimous on that. Okay, so now, is there any other discussion on the item as amended? Seeing none, all in favor as amended? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, moving on to the school construction projects. Jim, anything in particular you want to note on the school projects update? 'Cause we just sat through a long meeting. I don't really want to spend more time. on
Yeah,
these.
no, I understand, Tom. I'll just say that we have started the programming process with the new Norwalk High School. There's an all-day meeting set up with the architect and the department heads, as well as Reginald, the principal of the school. So things are moving forward in that respect. Things keep moving forward with the design at Cranberry. And we're going to be approving the GMP for Narragansett. So those are pretty much, and Jefferson is moving along well as well. So that's pretty much the wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to note that to Ms. Loricella's question, or one of her questions, the power purchase agreement for solar at Ponus has now been signed, correct, Alan? And if all goes well, we hope to start installation end of the summer, maybe?
I think they're talking about late August.
Yeah.
It would probably go. They were thinking that by the time they signed the agreement, they're thinking that they couldn't get it done this summer, but they are scheduled to start this summer and finish it for the first month of September. By September.
Right, and all of our new construction, the new buildings does anticipate solar, correct?
Minimum roofing, roof PV system at the minimum.
Right, okay. Any specific questions for Jim or Alan on the school projects? I don't want to shortchange anybody, but I do want to keep us moving. Okay, moving on. D2, review request to execute an Eversource incentive agreement for Cranberry School and refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an Eversource new construction and major renovations memorandum of understanding for Path 2, whole building energy use intensity reduction cost share agreement for Cranberry School. The city is responsible for up to 25% of $20,000 or $5,000 for technical assistance, vendor services that includes energy charrette facilitation, EUI target setting, energy modeling, and mid-design review feedback. Account noted. Do you have a motion? Mr. Hooverman, thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I have John here tonight, work for Jim. If you have any question, I'm not that familiar with this. Bottom line is Eversource is going to look at this building and do Eversource of this whole analysis about, there's a basic energy model, and this building is going to exceed that, but how much we exceed, and they will give us incentive money. But part of this analysis, their normal procedure, they would hire they call it TA services, technical assistance services from an engineering firm, maximum up to $20,000, and they want the city to contribute 25%, which is $5,000. I know it's a small amount, but typically the staff cannot sign any agreement to obligate city expenditure. So as small an amount as this, we are required to bring it to council for approval.
And how do we pick Eversource?
They provide electricity to the city.
I'm sorry?
They provide electricity to the building.
No, I mean, I'm just going to Ms. Loricella's question about this other New England Energy Partnership, or one of the, is there another group that does this, or is this?
No, there is no other group. We are getting incentive money from Eversource. So they in order to figure out how much that we are entitled to, Eversource dictate who they hire to do the analysis, and then we just to pay $5,000 to contribute to it, and then they determine what the incentive amount the city will obtain.
Could you, as I recall, Alan, we did receive an incentive payment for Ponus. Am I right there?
Yes.
And how much was that?
It's quite a lot.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's over 300.
Yeah. Okay. John, did you want to add anything, or any questions?
Just to clarify, the rate that we would start off as is a minimum of 10% improvement. So obviously that's the baseline of minimum improvement, but we would obviously try to maximize it. So
questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? 2, 3, 4, unanimous. Great, thank you. All right. Item 3, review request to execute a GMP agreement with AB Tucci Buildings for the Narragansett School Kitchen Improvement Project. Refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an amendment to the agreement with AB Tucci Builders as the construction manager CM for this Narragansett Elementary School Kitchen Cafeteria Media Center Improvement Project. to accept the guaranteed maximum price in the amount of $2,618,353.14. Account noted. B, authorize the Land Use and Building Management Committee to issue change orders on contract for a total not to exceed $204,258. Do you have a motion?
I'll move the item.
Oh, Mr. Sassinelli, thank you. Go ahead.
I start again. John is our staff person managing this project. But generally speaking, the AB Tucci, who's the local builder, it's one of the few times he actually get involved. One of the only time, but this is the only first time he actually becomes a construction manager. Usually, it's a general contractor to us. So they had approved pre-construction services, and recently we went after state approval, went out to bid. We bid the first time, and because it's very different when you bid Jefferson School back like January or so. The market is very different from current market in terms of construction activity. And also the size of this project is small. So the first time we went to bid, we certain packages, trade packages we did not get bids on. And then we had to bid out a second time. We still didn't get some bids, but they're small amounts, all total about I think $70,000, $80,000. So in here, we are prepared to move forward with it, and we anticipate the smaller packages. They are contracted that we will seek them directly. Since we meet the requirement of public bidding twice already, we are taking the position, we, including purchasing, are taking a position that the city has ability to find a contractor and negotiate to the best price we can for those packages. I think there's 5 of them. It's 2 of them. It's less than 10 grand. One's 20 grand. One is 30. One is 40. Something like that, roughly. So anyway, we are ready to start this project, and subject to committee approval and common council approval of amendment to Tucci's agreement, we can start. In fact, we can start, generally speaking, immediately before. And then there's a lot of planning involved. They got to do some middle packages and stuff like that, so we can start construction right after the school ends in the middle of June.
Are you still planning to be done by new school?
We lost a month because we had to rebid. So originally we planned to like October, November. It's probably November, December. But the way this project designed, we actually do the kitchen addition. So we really don't impact the school operation much at all. Only place impact on is really media center a little bit. So we are looking at secondary plan in case we cannot provide we should be able to provide get the media center ready. But if not, we probably miss it by about 3 weeks, 4 weeks the most. So we're looking at alternative plan in case we can't finish on time before school opens. There's alternative plans in place.
And to Ms. Loricelli's question, my understanding is the new kitchen does have tray washing station.
John?
It does, and actually I did speak with Chartwell's, the kitchen managers, about the food recycling option, and they do have that as a service that we could definitely engage, and it's not a huge increase in costs. So I did have a conversation with them.
And that's more of a Bill Hodell's question. I mean, I guess the question about trays and stuff, we have incorporated tray washing equipment as part of the design package, construction package.
Right. That's what I thought.
Right, and when operation wise, it's really Bill and the food service provider. It's not the capital side. So
quickly, the food service provider Chartwell's does have a goal. They want to increase the composting across all schools. Right now, it's only at row 8. So that also answers Diane Larchella's one of her questions.
Yeah, I should say that I've been in a conversation with the superintendent and some representatives from Rolayton School, got the program going there. And I know the superintendent's eager to expand it as much as she can throughout the school system.
Yeah.
Anyway, any further questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Okay, item 4, review recommendation to hire Gilbane Building Company as construction manager for the Norwalk High School project, and refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with the Gilbane Building Company as construction manager CM for the Norwalk High School new construction project. Terms of the agreement shall include the following: pre-construction phase services, including reimbursable allowance, $392,360. CM bid is a percentage of total trade bids, 1.85%. CM contingency is a percentage of total trade bid, 2.5%. Following the bidding process, final guaranteed maximum price will be submitted to the Common Council for approval. Account noted. Do you have a motion? Mr. Hooverman. Alan, you want to talk about this?
I think I'll leave it to Jim.
Yeah, we went through our CM selection process similar to that we did on Cranberry and Narrowmick, where we issued a request for qualifications, narrowed down the field to, in this case, 3 to be interviewed. We went through the interview process and then narrowed that down to 2 prospective RFP respondents. Those respondents were Turner Construction and Gilbane Building Company, both very large, reputable construction management firms that both do quite a bit of school construction nationwide, as well as in Connecticut. We issued the RFP. The responses came back exceptionally tight, very close. A lot of discussion between the selection committee, and it was considered that Gilbane would be the preferred CM to build the new Norwalk High School.
Questions, discussion? Okay, put it to a vote. All in favor? I think I know how this is going to come out. All opposed? 1 opposed, Mr. Keegan. The rest are in favor. Thank you. Okay, item 5 is being withdrawn. I understand it. Alan, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, Bill, yes, being withdrawn for technical reasons.
Okay, I'll come back, I guess, maybe next month.
Yeah, depending.
Okay. Item 6, a review proposed action for the Silvermine School asbestos flooring remediation project. Council action is not required. Authorize the chairman of the City of Norwalk Land Use and Building Management Committee, acting as the Norwalk School Committee per city ordinances, to certify the City of Norwalk Land Use and Building Management Committee's approval of the final plans, project manual, and cost estimate for the Silvermine Elementary School asbestos flooring removal and replacement project. State Project 103-0262 CV. Do you have a motion? Ms. Smith, thank you.
That's Bill's project, please.
Bill's project.
Yes, if I can, I'd like to share my screen and I will be brief.
Okay.
Pretty ferns.
Yeah. You're putting ferns in place of this asbestos.
Do you see that now? I got rid of the ferns real quick. So last month I was in front of this board to receive approval for the specifications and plans for the 8 underground oil storage tanks. Today it's a very similar request, only it's for the asbestos floor tile removal and replacement at Silvermine. So this is the plan. It's 2 sheets, so everything in red will be abated and everything in green and red and blue here will be the new tile going back. The areas not shaded are not asbestos containing material, so they're not part of the project.
So, Bill, will this get rid of all asbestos in the building?
That's a good question. The answer is, since the asbestos floor tile is coming loose, that is the first priority. There's a lot of duct tape and gaffer's tape holding it down. This must be removed in accordance with the asbestos management plan. Now, do we have pipe insulation above the ceilings or behind the walls in certain areas? Most likely that is not part of this project, but it will remove all the, what we call VAT, vinyl asbestos tile.
Okay, thank you.
So the other part, and we talked about earlier, is the cost estimate. This will also be submitted. The price here is $429,000. Unfortunately for me, it's just under the threshold. Otherwise, this would be Alan's project. And lastly, This is the specifications. There's a lot of pages here. I don't want to, it's 216 pages. What this does is shows you the actual specifications on what tile to pick, what glue to pick, what carpet to pick, so on and so forth. So we're here to, I'm here in front of you tonight to get approval to move this forward so then we can issue it to the state, have them review it, and then we can go out to bid. This will also require a certain individual to sign these plan specifications and cost estimate.
I'll be at City Hall tomorrow if that helps.
Great. I'd like to see if you could stop by and see us.
Yeah, I will. Are any questions on this?
Sorry, I know I'm not trying to delay this conversation. I just want to add this, that a lot of time we do a co-improvement project for schools, and we would do the hallways first because it takes so much time to do an improvement project and do abatement first, and then do improvements in the place. So the reason I got a feeling that the reason why the hallways are clean is because some time ago, probably back in early 1990s, there was a Silver Mine project that probably took care of the hallways and they're leaving the classroom to future dates kind of thing. So I think this is why we're only doing the classrooms right now.
Alan, you are correct in most other schools, but not here. The hallways here are terrazzo, so they're not asbestos containing material, but you are correct in a lot of the middle schools and many other schools, and that will be my future projects. We do know Roten is high on the list, and we want to do them next after Silver Mine.
Okay, I was on mute. All right, all in favor, or unless there are any questions? Okay, it is unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, we've just been going so fast, I should slow down now. Item 7, review recommendation to implement middle school's bathroom renovation project and refer the following to the Common Council for action. Authorize the Office of Building Management to execute change orders on contract with Guardian Services and Industries, Inc. to provide project management and labors necessary to implement phase 1 of the middle school bathroom renovation project for the summer of 2021 for a total not to exceed $87,971.84. Account noted. Do I have a motion? Mr. Roberts, thank you. Alan.
Yep. As I
You
mentioned
gave us a
before,
little heads up before, but why don't you go into more detail?
yeah, as we mentioned before about the sequencing of capital budget project approval, funding approval, and the desire to do implementation of project the same summer. It's very difficult to do, and it took a lot of effort here to come up with a solution that breaks up the project into 2 phases. One is that because this project has a number of items that need to be corrected, and some of them are very simple, that replacing toilet seats and faucets and sinks and some toilets and things like that. And then also lighting fixtures and painting and things like that. So overall, we figured in order to achieve some success this summer, what we propose to do, instead of going through, me and Neil from our office, we went through the 3 schools. Ponus is done already, generally speaking. So we're looking at Roten, Nathan Hale, and Westport, and we kind of identify all the things that we can take care of this summer if the low-bearing fruits, effectively and efficiently. We're gonna get as much of that stuff done as possible, and leaving the bathroom that needs renovation for summer 2022. So it's a 2-step process, and the reason why we're doing it this way is really efficiency. It's we're using Guardian currently providing support to me as a facility managers, but yeah, we have the ability to increase the contract to pick this up as a capital improvement project, and they will hire, I think it's 4 people for 2 months period based on hourly rate, weekly rates kind of thing. If we need it more, we probably hire more people. If not, then we can reduce the amount. So it's really not to exceed the amount. So the goal is that we can tackle it. All they do is providing labor. And then we are having purchasing department to purchase all the material, including faucets and sinks and whatever we need, so that we can break up that so basically speaking, we're general contracting this project, providing labor through guardians, and the city is going buying a material directly. The trades that we may need outside contractor is probably painting and electrical.
So Alan, every bathroom is going to be, I mean, let's just talk about the ones that are being done this summer, but every bathroom this summer will be painted?
No.
No.
No. So if the bathroom is going to be like a better word, renovated, we're not going to paint this year and then.
No, I'm saying the ones we're doing this summer.
Yeah.
So every bathroom we're doing this summer painting along with the other stuff, right? Leave aside the ones that you're putting off till
Right.
Everyone else is going to be painted.
No, some of them doesn't need painting at all. Okay. So we actually very objectively walk through each one of the bathroom. Me and Neil walk through it, and George, who works for Bill's staff, we actually went through some of the bathrooms. Some of the bathroom doesn't need any work at all. Just I want you to know, especially the single-use bathrooms, because it's really a teacher's bathroom and it's kept neat and tidy and stuff. There's no improvement needed. So we are very objective. We go through each room, identify if there's a partition that needs to be, the locking hardware doesn't work, we'll correct those. Again, on and on. So we have you can probably see the list of improvements here. There's each bathroom is different, and some places, there are bathrooms that absolutely need to be renovated next summer. So we may do the ceiling and lighting this year in those bathrooms, because when we renovate a bathroom, we won't touch the ceiling. So it's not the money that we throw away. So this is not just a Band-Aid. This is really improvement. So we replace a sink this year. That means that sink doesn't need to be replaced next year. So, and then the faucet. So it's not like we're doing some Band-Aid work, and these are actually physical improvement that's permanent to those facilities. And some bathroom, after we finish this, no additional work is needed. A lot of these is. So I think Nathan Hill is probably the worst of all three buildings. So again, after we finish this, we are very comfortable. All the places we work on is substantial enough that people, the kids, the students, and faculty are very comfortable what the improvements are, and we're happy with it. The ones that we're leaving next year is basically stay the same way. I mean, they are somewhat bad condition, but at the same time, we're not going to throw money away just to brighten it up for 1 year. So there's a balance in where we draw a line, how much you do and how much we don't do. But that portion is as objective as we are, is subjective in terms of determine how much we do and don't do.
Okay. Barbara?
Yeah, it looks like you're really addressing what the kids and the parents have been complaining about. Making sure that the doors close and stay closed when needed, that the faucets are working, toilet seats and things like that. I think that those are the things that the parents really want to see. And I mean, it's a very comprehensive list of those items. So I'm glad to see this.
Yeah, I am too. And I'd like to see before and after photos.
Yeah, I mean, me and Neil walk through a building. I think our mental strategy is this: as I don't live in town, but as a taxpayer in town, as a parent in the school system, as a kid, what do I need to do to this bathroom that I'd be comfortable and my kids will be comfortable using? And that's the kind of philosophy we have in terms of looking at what needs to be done in each of the bathrooms. So I think the bathroom we work on this year, I think for me, it's good for the next 15 to 20 years. Okay, so I mean, if somebody's looking for gut renovating and stuff, I think some of these bathrooms is not need. I mean, again, all these bathrooms are not needed. There's no question they're dated. There's nothing wrong with the tile. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the tiles. But you know what? There's certain bathroom that we're going to replace partition next year. We couldn't do partition this year because you got to lay it out, design it, and by the time you go out for bid and stuff like that, we won't be able to do it this year. But we will make sure they're working. I think fundamentally that's the objective, and it's clean, it's maintainable. But at the same time, they are going to be substantial because the light fixtures. Some bathroom, all it needs is like get a new light bulb, get a fluorescent light bulb, cleaning the shield and all. But there are bathrooms that we're going to put new one because some bathrooms has black partitions. So when the light fixture is on the other side where you need the sink, it's look like sitting in little closets and stuff like that. So it's a placement of the light fixture and stuff like that. So we're going to look at all that stuff. The other thing we're not addressing is ADA. it's a complicated evaluation. I think we're gonna leave it after we finish the summer. We're gonna hire an architecture firm to go through these bathrooms to look at it, to see what needs to be done in terms of ADA. ADA is a complex discussion because for a school, you can meet ADA requirement by having a certain number of bathroom handicap accessible. Not all of them has to be. So you got to really evaluate the whole building as a whole. So we are here to do these initial improvements as phase one to get the building to the level that, you know, that's clean and comfortable for all the users. So that's our main objective.
Yeah, Alan, I want to thank you and your staff for taking this on because, as we all know, we got a lot of commentary about the bathrooms earlier on, particularly in the budget cycle. And as we discussed earlier, the timing is such that, you know, it's difficult to get anything done right now, and as we're so close to summer. But I really appreciate, I think we all appreciate your, you know, getting out there and taking this on. So thank you. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Nick, Kadeem? Okay, unanimous, thank you. All right, so I rushed this through an hour. Anybody else want to talk about something else?
What's for dinner?
Outstanding job, Tom.
Yes, well done. We have been at it since 6 o'clock. So
We have, okay.
don't forget that.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Okay, all in favor? Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, Jim, everybody else, Bill.